And I want to kind of ask you a different question. I want to say, well, what is nagging? You won't be listening well if you're not curious or interested. We're fighting for the right to have our feelings and our opinions validated. You've tried to fix it, but you keep falling into the same trap. Those are the times when you really need to be going into therapy.
Hi there, welcome to the Quiet Package podcast. Because I'm a man, a husband, and hungry for knowledge, I found very useful to talk with a therapist. And in this episode, my hunger for knowledge brings Lena Fenton from Lena Fenton's Counseling. You know, Lena Fenton's Counseling is an online service and you can use it in the comfort of your home. I need to give my thanks to Nero Pizza for this pizza. They gave us some bruschettis, but I'm not good for food delivery and I mess it up in the car. The prosciutto looked nice.
Okay.
But I will make a picture with what I did. Yeah, and here we have some new pizza which they want to introduce in menu.
Huh?
Now I want to ask you, how is pizza in Italy?
How is pizza in Italy?
Yeah.
Usually very good. Usually. I think in Italy there is a better variety of pizzas.
Yeah,
Both in
it's
terms
supposed
of
to.
yeah, both in terms of the topping, but also in terms of the dough. For instance, you don't find very often in this country black dough,
Okay.
which is a carbon-based dough. There is one place in Leeds that we found that does a black dough, but it's much more common in Italy, for example. And the variety of toppings is very different as well. There's more variety in terms of meat and vegetables and so on, and also the cheeses. So yeah, obviously it's the home of pizza. It's going to be better.
Yes.
Mostly, not always. It's not 100%, but yeah.
Nero Pizza, they try to do Napolitan pizza.
Oh yes. That's now Naples, of course, is where
Yeah.
pizza actually originated from.
Yeah.
So it's the home of pizza.
Exactly. Can you have a slice?
Yes, please.
Which one you like?
I think this is a hot. This salami will be a hot salami.
I think so.
Yeah, I
Yes.
don't eat peppery foods, so I will go
But-
for that one.
All right. We can switch.
Okay. The thing I really like about pizza is that it's one food that you can legitimately eat with your hands,
Yeah.
and it feels very comfortable. You feel comfortable eating with your hands in a way that, although I think, some people do eat it with cutlery, but I like eating with my hands, especially pizza.
I had one video with a friend of mine. We been to arcades and we play in Doncaster, in Barnsley, and we went for a pizza. And my friend, he made the sandwich from pizza. He took 2 slices. That's a way how to eat it.
This is actually really quite lovely. I'm trying to figure out because it's not. Is it prosciutto? Do you think that they put here?
Yeah,
It's lovely. Actually, that is really nice pizza.
that they use. I don't know from where he's buying the meat, but he's using very good meat.
Maybe it's imported. A lot of genuine Italian places will actually import the food because it's more authentic that way. Because this is nice, actually.
This one is nice as well. It's a bit spicy. I stopped eating spicy, but yeah, I can eat salami. Now we finished eating some pizza, and this was the interesting part because I gave pizza to Italian person.
Yes, yes,
How did
indeed.
you find it?
Very nice, actually. Very quite comparable to what you would get in Italy. Actually, really enjoyed it. It gets
Good.
my approval.
Oh, that's good. Now, Nero Pizza, I need to give me more pizza.
Absolutely.
I want to talk with you about relationships
Yes.
and basically why we getting married.
Oh, wow. Okay. Why do we get married? I think that's a really interesting question, and one that, because I sometimes do premarital counseling as well. And so we talk about that, and what's the difference between getting married and just living together, right? What is the difference? What is the significance actually of marriage? What is inside a person that gives them that desire, actually? I think the way that I've described it in the past is that when we fall in love, when we love somebody, it's a feeling that feels like it's never going to change. It's a feeling that feels like it's a permanent feeling of love for that person, and we want to kind of make that declaration to everybody. And I think that's initially where the tradition of marriage started from. What's interesting is that throughout all the different cultures and throughout the ages, some kind of ceremonial display of commitment has almost always been present. So today, in 2025, we call it marriage. It's been called many things, but most cultures have some form of ritualistic way of declaring what fundamentally I think is a feeling of permanence, of an emotional
Assurance.
attachment. Yeah, that's on an internal level. I mean, on an external level, there's all the reasons, to financial security, property. There's all of those kinds of things. But I think from emotional, why a human being would want to do something like that, I think that is my understanding of it. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Why we get in a relationship. Because
Okay,
I know people say I'm okay by myself. Even
sure.
I talked with a Spanish priest and he told me the times teach us to be better on us individual, and sometimes we don't need somebody else just to do it by ourselves.
The fact is, however, that biologically we are a group animal,
Yeah,
like our cousins, monkeys and apes and what have you. And if to quote an expert in these things, Brené Brown, who researched this whole area for many years, she came to the conclusion that actually we're born hardwired for two things: love and belonging. Okay, so if you ask me why we get into relationships, it's because we need relationships simply to survive in the beginning, but also we need relationships to be safe. So if you think again biologically, an individual is much more vulnerable, whereas a group has more potential for survival. So again, I'm going back to sort of, kind of primordial biology, if you like. But I think that's what's hardwired into us, that in order to survive, we need relationships.
I think it's basically what we learn in the this time when it was COVID, when we're
Yes,
supposed to stay at
yes,
home by ourselves.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that because I think loneliness, one of the hidden mental health problems of loneliness is that it actually makes you feel that, it can make you feel quite depressed, you feel detached, isolated, all of those things, which don't happen if we have at least one other person. So I think there are biological reasons, there are psychological reasons, and there are also environmental reasons. We grow up in a group. We grow up in a.
That does mean people who are saying they're okay by themselves, they're lying themselves.
No, I don't think so.
Sometimes when you're in a relationship, you say, "Oh, I think it was better by myself."
Sure, but that's usually when things are bad, right?
Yes.
We say that's when we say, no, I'm better off by myself because you've had bad experiences. There is but just on the point of being alone, I want to say that there's a very real difference between loneliness and solitude. I think it's important to have time and space to be alone, so that you have some space for solitude. But that's chosen.
Yeah.
You choose that for yourself when it's right for you. That's different to just being alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I think being alone when it's not your choice creates loneliness. When you choose to be alone, that is solitude, and that can be a time for contemplation. It can be a time for processing your own feelings and thoughts. It's a different process.
Yeah, I never think about that.
So both are necessary, I think, to conclude that both are necessary.
Yeah.
Relationships and aloneness. And most of us need a different mixture of those two, definitely.
Now I want to ask you how you discover the online therapy.
Okay. So my journey with that began back in the 1990s when I had a client who moved to another part of the world. And so that client had been with me for some time, and she decided to go back to her own country of origin, but didn't want to stop the therapy. And back in those days, you know, for those of us that remember, there used to be a thing called Skype. You know, back in the days of dial-up internet, you know, and so I think I started back then using Skype. And I continued here and there to do kind of online sessions. But it wasn't until... So I'm trained at the Tavistock Relationship Institute, and they set up a branch of it, which is just for online. This was back in 2017. They set up a separate arm. No, it's not separate. It was a different way of providing therapy for people. And I was one of the first people to go on to that because I'd already been doing some private in my own private practice. And so from 2018, I was working online with some clients. And then, of course, COVID meant that, you know, we were all doing it then. But that was 2 years later. So that's how I discovered working online. But I wonder if you're also asking a different question, which sometimes I'm asked about, is working online effective?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, mention the Tavistock again. They collected data for through the years, and what they've discovered is that the effectiveness of online therapy is 95% as good as face-to-face, in person.
That's a good percent.
It's a very high percent. And I have to tell you that I have many successful couples that have had successfully had therapy with me that I've never met in person and probably never would. So although I've worked for many years in person and face to face, nowadays I only provide online therapy because I'm confident that I can provide a professional top quality service that is almost equal to in person.
That's very good to hear. But can you share any success story?
Sure.
What made the difference for them?
Okay, so one couple that comes to my mind, I've been working with them for about a year. They have a couple of small children, and they were barely talking when we started. And often that happens, that couples come to therapy in crisis. You know,
Yeah.
that they're not talking, there's no intimacy, nothing like that. And gradually, slowly, a year later, you know, they're a couple again, if you like. What makes the difference? I think that's a really, I think that's a unique, it's unique to every couple what makes the difference, right? I don't think you can say it's this thing and this thing for every couple. But from my point of view, most of the time, it's the fact that both people are willing to turn up to the meeting with the willingness in their hearts to change something. I think that's absolutely key to the success of any therapy, is the individual's willingness to do something different. Because like the saying goes, and I don't know who said it, but you know, if you keep doing the same thing, you'll get the same result. Of course, there's a whole range of tools that I have and a whole range of skills which I teach people, in effect, about listening, about communication, all kinds of things. For example, I recommend for people to do every day. One of them would be that at the end of each day, each individual, so myself and my partner, before we go to sleep, we think of 3 positive things about your partner. 3 things that they did well, 3 things that you like, just anything, 3 positive things. You know, maybe it's the fact that you like the way your partner smiles, or that they brought you a cup of tea when you didn't even ask, or you know, something positive about that, just or something. It doesn't have to be something small, it can be something big, whatever. 3 positive things about your partner every single day. What makes the difference is the consistency of that small thing that you do each day. Yeah?
Yeah. Like it's going to be a habit,
Exactly.
a tiny one.
Yes.
But still, you are going to think about the impact. Even I need to give my thanks for the meal, which I forgot to do that.
Exactly.
But now I'm telling to my daughter to say to my wife.
To say thank
But
you.
I'm not saying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know why. It's not like I don't want.
Yeah.
It's basically, if I say to my daughter, do that,
Yeah.
basically I want to do that as well. But
Yes, because you know it's a good thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Yes, of course, of course. You know, sometimes when people say that to me, I forget to do. I say to them, "You have a mobile phone, right?
yeah.
Put it on your phone. Remember to say thank you to your wife until it becomes a habit." Yeah, because I think we have so much. We're overstimulated, actually. Certainly in the Western world, we're overstimulated, and so sometimes remembering just those small things
Yeah.
can just evaporates from your mind, really.
Yeah, that's the problem for me, because I'm thinking, even I'm supposed to spend time with the family, my mind is away.
Exactly. Which brings me to another tip. Okay, so another thing that I believe a couple should do every day, especially when they're not getting on so well. All right, and that is to make sure that you find a few minutes where you give each other the time, just 2 or 3 minutes each, that you just share with your partner what's going on for you right now. Okay, so you might...
But to listen.
And to listen.
To listen.
To
I think that's the problem, because it's like, oh, but I did that as well.
Yes, exactly. So
I found out that's wrong.
yes. So that particular exercise means that you give you give yourself or your partner let's say it's me in that example. I take 3 minutes. My partner is silent. We can even set a timer if you want, or 2 minutes, whatever feels comfortable. And I just speak about myself. Okay. There's a rule, though. You don't make any you statements. So you don't say you da 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 da. You say I feel, I think. This is what is happening for me. In that 3 minutes, you cannot say anything about the other person. Okay. It has to be only about you.
Yeah.
Right. And the other partner doesn't give you any feedback. Okay. So if it were you, you have to keep a straight face, no kind of looking around or throwing your eyes up in the air. You just keep a straight face, you listen, and you say thank you at the end of it, and that's it. And then the other person does their 3 minutes, and you say thank you to them, and it's finished. You don't give feedback, you don't react, because it's not about you. It's about learning to listen without thinking. And that's another key to a good relationship, is the capacity to hear the other person without in a neutral stance. Because often when we're listening, we're not really listening. We're just waiting for the next moment to say what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the bad way of listening. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Another technique which my wife teach me.
Okay.
She said, after I tell how it was for me, said, what did you understand?
Yes. But that's, yes.
Just to be sure you listen.
Absolutely. But that's a different exercise. That's for a different purpose. That's to be more in a conversation, right?
I think that it's more for me because sometimes she's talking and
and your mind is elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's basically she engaged me in the conversation with that.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
I need to pay attention.
Yes, exactly.
It's going to be a test after.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good exercise, and that means you're listen, and it's not helping only in relationship with your partner. Basically, it's helping you in even business, even
With
the
your
workplace, and even with the children. Exactly.
Yes.
How success look like for a couple who takes couple therapy?
So I thought about that, and I thought,
How it looks like in the end.
yeah,
How
yeah,
you're
yeah,
supposed
yeah.
to feel.
So one of the things that I do is when a couple first comes to me, is I ask them that question. Okay? Because again, it's individual, it's unique. So what would be success for one couple might not be for the other couple. All right? So I often will say to them, so if we start working together, what do you think it would look like for you when we finish, when therapy comes to a close and we agree you've done enough? What would your relationship look like? So I solicit that answer from them. So it depends on what the problems are, if that makes sense. Let's take the most common problem of all. I mean, the top problem for all relationships, as far as I'm concerned at least, is communication. Okay? So a lot of time in the therapeutic process is spent learning and improving communication between two people. I have, for instance, a thing called the communication wheel, which teaches people how to talk about a specific subject. Things like money or sex, which are often very difficult subjects to talk about because they're a very
Both of
emotive
them.
subject. Exactly. And so I teach them, I take them through the wheel and I teach them how to express themselves about that subject and how to listen. Yeah. And at the end of it, two people, what will happen is if I describe to you a fairly normal scenario, which is that you have two people, they're only talking to me, they don't talk to each other. And I teach them how to talk to each other. So by the end of the process, months later, usually the average couple will be in therapy somewhere between 6 to 9 months. But it can be as long as, 18 months, even 3 years is the longest I've successfully treated, if you like. And they will talk to each other. By the end of that process, whenever that is, they will not only be talking to each other, they'll be listening to each other. And they'll feel, it's very difficult to describe this, but they will feel like a couple. They will sit closer, they'll have learned to joke with each other, they'll be relaxed and easy with each other, in a way that when they first arrived, tense and angry or resentful or not trusting or all of those kinds of things, there's a kind of transformation that occurs, which can be quite slow, to be fair, but it's very real and it can feel, it's palpable. You can almost touch it. It's so different. And the couple I was talking about earlier was like that. They could barely spend 5 minutes in the room together. And now they sit comfortably on the sofa together when they're talking to me. They look at each other, they smile, they joke and so on. That's the kind of transformation that I'm looking for when I'm working with a couple.
I smile when you said the people are not able to stay in the same room. But this is weird. It's just because they fall in love and they get in that position.
Yep.
And it is weird. Why?
Well, there's probably as many reasons as there are peoples as to why, right? So here it might be useful to talk a little about a concept which we don't really talk about very much, which is that a human being, me, you, anybody, I have an inner world and then there's my outer world, right? When we first get together, we mostly connect on the outer level, right? As we get to know each other, we learn more and more about our inner world. And often in that inner world, there are traumas, small t traumas, I'm not talking about huge, but there are difficulties, there's history with relationships, there's all kinds of, let's call them negative things as well as positive ones that don't generally come out at the start of a relationship. Those things will come out later on, okay? And when people aren't able to negotiate around those problems, that's when the resentments start, the anger starts, the disconnect starts. And that's why they end up not being able to stand each other, but not actually leaving each other, sorry. Because there's still love there, but it's been covered over with so much rubbish, I call it.
Noise,
right? That they can't find each other in that good place anymore. And often the therapy involves getting through that noise and finding that good stuff again, reconnecting there, and then together they can clear out the noise, the stuff.
what do you think is the most common problem in a couple relationship?
Well, like I said earlier, communication. The other thing that I would say is connection. I think that they're twins, in my own mind. Communication and connection are twins. Because communicating is in a sense, about connecting. If you're connecting, however you're doing it, you're communicating. So when I say communication, I really mean that as an umbrella term for all the things that we do to give messages to each other. So whether it's posture, tone, or at the actual words or the look, we communicate with our eyes, we communicate in all kinds of ways. And all of those are used, I think, to connect. To connect intellectually, emotionally, physically, sexually. All of it is about connection. So when most often, if not always, and I don't have any data to support this, but I'm mostly talking about my experience, and I've been a counsellor for over 30 years, so I think I've got some substantial amount of experience. The biggest problem is that people forget how to connect.
True.
Or they take for granted their connection.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Which is equally as destructive, actually. It makes me think of that very old joke about a very old couple in their 60s or 70s, something like that. And they're sitting together, and she says to him, "Do you still love me?" They've been together 40 years or whatever. And he answers, "I told you 20 years ago. If that changed, I would have told you." Right? Because and that's what I mean by taking it for granted.
Yeah.
Because I told you 20 years ago, then it should still hold true now. Well, no, we need to reinforce those connections. Right? And when we stop doing that, the connection, it's like an elastic that, the longer you leave it, the longer you're pulling it, and eventually that elastic will snap, right?
Yeah.
Right? Which is why we keep coming back together to reinforce that connection, to make sure that you don't stretch it too far till it snaps. Yeah. So you asked, what is the most common problem that people come with? I would say that's it. Fundamentally, whether it's over money, whether it's over sex, whether it's over anything, at the core of it all is a broken connection.
That for me sound very true, because I don't know if it's that the motive, but usually the woman, she's doing house chores and the man is coming from work and watch a football match, and it's like everyone is with his thing.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
They're not doing the things together.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, if that same couple that you've just described just spent 3 minutes sharing what's going on for them before they went about their different things, then that would reinforce that connection, and then they could go off and do their different things.
I think this may be wrong. It's wrong, but after the couple have children, it's even the connection can be broken even harder, because
Yes.
they don't know exactly how to stay connected.
Yes, because the focus changes.
Yeah.
And that's another time when people often come in crisis after they've had children, because there's a transition period, because today you're just the two of you, and now there's a third person.
I think that's why I see so many couples with children and they are divorced or they split up after they have children.
Yes, because they don't make that transition well. And people, I believe, what I've seen in my life and in my professional life as well, is that once a child is born, people change quite fundamentally. And so
But why?
Because I think having a child, becoming a parent, gives you a different sense. It changes your identity in some way. It changes your sense of yourself. In the old days, for instance, men would feel very much the burden of the responsibility of providing for the family, and that will change him. The woman will feel her body will have changed so much. Her focus will have changed so much. I mean, things are a little bit different now, but kind of biologically, the process is still the same. And they've forgotten who they were.
How we can remember?
How can you remember? Good question. Very good question.
Like an example, yesterday I was searching up a specific picture on my collection. I found some old pictures with me and my wife, and even with my daughter. And she said, "Oh, we did some nice things," but it's like that was last year. We did those things last year, but since then it's like we didn't do too much together.
Life takes over, doesn't it? That's what happens often to people. Life just kind of takes over, and you forget yourself, and you forget each other. Not intentionally, not in any kind of malicious way, but you just, your focus goes in so many other places. And you have to, I think that you have to make a point, whether it means setting aside time, whether it means taking up old hobbies together. You have to consciously and purposely decide that you're going to reconnect, that you're going to find each other again, right? Because if you think back to when you first met, it's all the fun things you did together that bonded you.
Yeah.
And so you kind of almost have to do that again. But differently, because you're now different people, right? You're now parents, you now have other responsibilities, other commitments. So differently, but still you have to invest the time into your relationship in order to nurture it.
Yeah.
Do you see? Because if you're getting up at whatever time, going to work, coming home exhausted, doing the bare minimum that you have to do, see to your child, see to this, see to that, whatever, and go to sleep. At what point did you stop and just focus on your partner for 5 or 10 minutes? Even just in one day, let alone setting aside a whole, 2 or 3 hours a week to just do something together that you enjoy, that's fun. There's an old saying, the family, or the couple in this case, that plays together stays together, right? In neurological terms, what we're now saying is that the neurons that fire together bond together.
What do you mean fire together?
Fire together. So in our brain, the synapses fire.
Yeah.
Different signals are fired. So when they fire together, they bond. Okay, so you create a habit in that way, right? So I was just giving you the scientific version of the saying, the couple that plays together stays together. I think what happens when we get children and we get important jobs and we get promotions or whatever, we forget to continue to play together. It stops being a priority. You've got to go back there. There's no really other way. Even when, can I talk about sex?
Yeah.
Yeah? Even when people stop having sex, for example, which is a common occurrence also when you have children, the treatment, for want of a better word, is to put aside 2 evenings a week. Well, it's called sensate focus sessions. This is traditional sex therapy kind of exercises, right? But in order to do that, you have to put aside the time. You have to prioritize that time to spend with your partner. Now, whether we're talking about sex or whether we're talking about playing cards just to have a laugh together. You have to invest that time to reconnect and refresh your energies together.
It's become like a synergy, if I say it right.
Yes, yes, exactly. Lots to think about, huh?
Yeah. I think one of the problem in the relationships it's when one of the partner it's nagging.
Nagging.
Yeah. The one other one, I think it's playing like his victim. Like,
Right.
but I did that already. Why not do your best self or find excuses? I can say usually when my wife she asks why you didn't do that, and I'm just bring a stupid excuse and creating a conflict.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
you are always busy and you don't have time to take the trash out,
Yeah.
which I'm doing it. But
Sure. Okay, I think you're. There's two problems I think that you're describing there. The first one is nagging, okay, and I want to kind of ask you a different question. I want to say, well, what is nagging? Now, as far as I'm concerned, what nagging is, whether it's man or woman, I don't think it's the prerogative of females to nag, to be honest. One example of a man nagging is my husband, who often points out that I've left my shoes out again, right? Because he's a very tidy person, and everything should be put in its place, right? And sometimes I just take my shoes off and leave them there, right? And you could call that nagging.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think nagging comes about because you've been asked, something has been asked, and the person hasn't responded. Right? So, for example, as you know, using the example of me and my shoes, I've been asked multiple times to put my shoes away, okay, and multiple times I forget. Okay, this is a really stupid example, but the fact remains that nagging is a repetitive thing because the original request wasn't answered, if you see what I mean, right? So there's nagging, which is, well, my answer to that is if you heard me the first time, I wouldn't have to repeat myself. Do you see?
Yeah, but
Okay.
let's say
So
it's going to happen again, and I'm going to say, I'm going now.
Yeah, absolutely. But then there's the other thing, which is negotiation. So taking this a little bit more deeper, a little bit more seriously, if I'm required to do something which I either may or may not want to do, may not be able to do, whatever, I should be able to negotiate with my partner. And I think this is also a key component of a good relationship, is one's capacity, or two people's capacity, to negotiate together for their needs, if you like. Okay? So if I find myself nagging you, it's because you're not meeting my need. But at the same time, it's also because I haven't been able to negotiate with you how we might get my needs met. Right? So my need might be for the rubbish to be taken out daily. Okay, again, silly example, but these become real problems in a relationship, right?
Yes.
I may have a very sensitive nose and I really need the rubbish to be taken out every day, okay? Now, my partner may or may not have the time to do that small job every day. So what do I need to do? I need to negotiate with him or her how we manage clearing the rubbish. So for, I don't know, again, I'm kind of making this up as I go along, okay? So forgive me if it's not a very good example, but, in the morning I might say, are you going to be around this evening? Will you be taking the rubbish out or shall I? right? Where we've both understood that I have this need that the rubbish is taken out every night, okay? So he or they might say to me, look, I've got a really long day. I'm going to be really knackered. You're going to have to do it yourself today. Okay, that's a negotiation. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that I'm going to, if there's been an agreement that, it's their job to take the rubbish out every night, I'm going to end up resenting them for not having done something that they've agreed to. Right?
Yeah.
But without consideration for our differing needs. Do you see what I mean? So you're talking about nagging. I call it a failure to negotiate.
Yeah. What I want to bring is this negotiation. Basically, I said, okay, I will do it later because now I'm busy to do something and I forgot.
Sure. And then you forgot. And
Yeah.
then you forgot.
That's the.
Then you very humbly apologize and say, I will make sure that doesn't happen again. I'll set an alarm on my phone so that I will, it will remind me to take the rubbish out later.
She gave me that solution and I didn't.
That's another form of negotiation.
Yeah, I didn't apply her solution basically. Okay. That means what she recommended me. She did it right. Even she told me if I don't remember stuff, what she telling me to have a notebook with me and
write it down, which you're never going to do because
it sounds
we have
silly
phones.
because I need to remember.
No, but look, everybody's memory works differently, right? And I think, but maybe like you, like a lot of people, I have multiple things going on in my mind, and things that are not especially important to me, I will forget. It's human nature. It's absolutely human nature. So it's about you learning to manage yourself. Or, in the example that you've given, what's going on for you, I would say, if you and your partner were a couple I was working with, I would say to the person who says, yeah, I was supposed to do that, but I forgot to even put a reminder to remind myself, right? That's what you're saying, yes?
Exactly.
What's going on? Why would you do that? I would be looking to find out what's going on for you that you would even forget to remind yourself. Whatever. It's like you're really... So there's that part, but there's also the other part, which is it's making your wife feel less important, I think. And that's often why those things become a problem. Because there was an example of a couple once, changing the example slightly, when she would get really furious because her husband would not put the towels back correctly on the towel rail, right? And when through the work, and we explored what is all this, right? It turns out that every time he just left the towels on the side or didn't put them back, she felt that he was telling her he didn't care about her. Because she had told him that it was important to her to have the towels back on the towel rail so that they're nice, and him ignoring that request felt like, you don't care about my feelings. And that's often behind that kind of argument. Yeah?
Yeah, but it wasn't true.
It doesn't matter whether it's true, it's how she feels.
Yeah. True.
Right? So, of course, her husband cared about her feelings. But in that particular example, it made her feel like he didn't. Yeah?
Yeah.
Whether he did or not wasn't the point. The point is that she recognized, and this is where the growth happened, she recognized for herself that that's why it upset her so much. And when he understood that as well, he was then able to be more compliant with her request. Because he understood it was important to her. And he did care about her feelings. So he made more of an effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because I think someone asked, how do you feel love?
How do you feel love? That's a really good question. That is such a good question. And one of the exercises, another little tip that I often give my clients is, over the next week, think of 3 things that make you feel particularly close to your partner, because those are the ways in which you feel loved, right? Now, I think that there are some universal examples that we could use, but I think that also there are some very specific and very unique examples of how you feel loved. Yeah. Now, if I use myself as an example, I know that I feel loved most when somebody is actually interested in how I feel and what I think, or my opinion, if you like, right? It makes me feel valued, it makes me feel important, and it makes me feel loved. Yeah. But for somebody else, it might be, buying things. If you buy me,
Or if you're interested in the same thing which I'm interested.
or yes, that. My partner is an amazing man, and one of the things that he does that makes me feel loved is he buys me flower whenever he goes shopping. At least once a week, he will buy me a bunch of flowers, so that when I'm working, because I have a desk set up. When I'm working, I've got the camera and the computer in front of me, but always on the side there is a bunch of flowers, for example. And those things that he does that, for me, he's thinking of me. He's got me in his mind. Those things make me feel loved, right? But it'll be something quite unique and different for every single person.
I always ask myself or people, because women expect flowers.
Okay.
What men expect.
Good question. A really interesting thing about that is that I think I've discovered in my work that often it's very similar things. It's all of those actions that lets you know that your partner is thinking about you. So men will say things to me like, she buys me my favorite foods, for example, or she'll have gone shopping and she's bought something for herself, but then she bought me something as well. So that again shows that you're thinking about your partner. One man I remember very, very clearly. He talked about his partner going. She bought herself some trainers, and he had been saying that same week that he needed new trainers, but she didn't. She only bought her, trainers for herself. And he's saying to me, so, you were in the shop, you were buying yourself some trainers. Why didn't you buy me some? Right? Because to him it felt like she was being really selfish. She didn't think about him at all. Another of the ways so that's on that side. The other main thing that men often bring is around sex. Because it seems that men much more than women, feel that loved through sex. That when they're able to be intimate, and I don't necessarily mean, the whole thing, but a sexual intimacy of any kind, any level, enables them to feel loved. That is a very common one with men, I think. And maybe that's on par with, I don't know, romantic gestures by the man for the woman. I think for the man, it's more about her wanting to be intimate with him. Men, I think, need to be desired just as much as women do.
Yeah.
Although they don't necessarily say that, but actually in their hearts, they need to feel that his woman wants him.
I agree with that.
Yes, yes.
It just popped in my mind. I read somewhere, man to get a connection with a woman, he need to have the sex before, but the woman to have the connection, she's supposed to have the connection after that, the sex.
Yes. And the reason for that is actually chemical, believe it or not. It's actually biological. So,
Yeah, but how we can deal with that? Because basically it's
yes,
different stages for both of them.
yes. Fortunately, it does work, right? But at first glance, it looks like, well, how do men and women ever get together, actually, right? It's like
Yeah, true.
somebody was having a joke, you know. But it does work, and I think it's because, well, this is just my opinion, okay? And this may be controversial, but I'm going to share it anyway. I think that women are attracted to strength and power, and I'll explain why in a minute. And I think that men are attracted to vulnerability. Okay, I don't mean consciously. I think this is on a kind of deep biological level. Now, chemically, what happens is that women need to feel the oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, right? And in order for them to make love, they need to be flooded. They need to have lots of oxytocin. Otherwise, they feel warm and loving and connected, right? Whereas a man, oxytocin is an antithesis to testosterone, which is the driving, right, the power hormone. Okay, a man gets flooded with oxytocin once he climaxes, and that's when he connects, right? Whereas she's been flooded with oxytocin all the way through the lovemaking, even before it starts. Now, if they were both full of oxytocin, they would never have intercourse because he needs that little bit of aggression, yeah, in his lovemaking, in the service of passion.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's how it works. Whereas she needs to be much more warm and accepting and passive, in a sense. But if both were like that, you would never get that connection. It's opposites attract. It really, really is.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
What toughest time in the relationship often helps people grow the most?
That's a lovely question. I think the growth is in the struggle, is the simple answer. If you're content, you don't need to change anything, right? There's no struggle in that. It's really only when things go wrong that you look for solutions, that you look to understand, that you look to change. That's what helps people to grow. It's in that struggle that we learn and we grow. Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically like in everything then.
Yes. The seed that you plant in the ground has to first of all break out of its shell, then it has to fight through the earth, right? And then it has to survive, too much sun, too much rain, whatever. It's in that rubbing, in that struggle that we really learn and grow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just
Makes
stay the
sense.
same, don't we?
Or maybe become worse.
Or just, yeah. Yes.
What I see, people, if you don't get better, they're getting worse.
Exactly. You can only grow or die.
Yeah.
In effect, and it's
I mean, it's grow or die like a plant.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because we are organic beings at the end
Yeah.
of the day, right? We're not static machines. And I think that's one of the problems with the way in which we think about sex, for example, because I think nowadays, and as a consequence of porn, in my opinion, I think that we have come to think of our bodies as machines. And whereas I think that sex is an organic process that involves the whole being, mind, body, and emotions. Whereas unfortunately, I think we treat ourselves more like machines. If you press button A, you'll get effect B, and if you keep pressing button A, you'll get effect B, C, and D. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and actually, it's not like that. It's organic, like like a growing plant. It's something that you co-create. Sex is a place that you go to, not something you do.
You already told me some tools for relationships, but which one is the best what a couple can learn if they come to therapy?
How to listen. It's that simple.
I think that's the most important part.
Absolutely. And even, and I'm, as I said earlier, I'm many years in this work, right? But even when it comes to my own personal relationships, I still have to sometimes remind myself, just listen,
Yeah.
just listen and hear, right? So it's an ongoing thing. You're never, it's never, you can't be complacent about it. You can't take it for granted. You have to keep making sure you're listening.
Yeah, I can relate with that. What do I mean with this? When I start doing podcasts, when I start in Romanian, and I didn't know how to do it. I was more carefully on the question what I was writing, and basically for me it's to ask the question what I had,
Yes.
and I barely listened my guest. That
Right.
was wrong.
Yes.
I missed out a lot of things.
Yes.
And that's why I found you really need to listen. Even now, I have the question for this,
Yeah.
but we still had few extra
Absolutely.
because
yes.
I listened.
Yes. Because then it's more of the conversation is more of an organic flow rather than just a stark question and answer sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So it's more alive. Yeah. So you learned that actually listening was the more important part than the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. There is one other thing that I think is really important that I think you have to have if you're going to be able to listen. And I would call it curiosity. You won't be listening well if you're not curious or interested in what the other person is going to say.
Yeah, but that's why I started the podcast, because I'm interested,
Exactly.
but I'm still learning how to listen.
Yes. But in a relationship, being curious about what your partner might be feeling or thinking or what's happening to them is going to motivate you to listen carefully. So curiosity is a key thing to learn as well.
Yeah, that's mean I apply this on my podcast, but not in relationship.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because only recently I had a disagreement with my partner, and I afterwards when I was reflecting on what we argued about, I was thinking I really wasn't curious enough about what he was saying. I was too interested in making my point.
I think
And
that's me.
Yeah, but it's the core of every argument. It's the core of every argument anyone has ever had, right? We're fighting for the right to have our feelings and our opinions validated, without any interest in what is going on for the other person. That's why arguments happen.
I think in my case, I try to explain my wife. She misunderstood me. Not like I was right with.
Yeah.
But I'm not listening.
Yeah.
It's because I try to show. I mean, still, I was trying to show if I'm right.
Basically.
Yeah, basically, in the end.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
And when we stop trying to be right and just actually listen, it changes the whole dynamic.
It's new for me. I started to do that.
Okay,
And
sure.
basically now I understand.
Yeah.
That's my sentence.
But I'm
I
also trying to reassure you and the listener that it's an ongoing thing, because even though I've been many years doing this and I have an excellent relationship with my partner, I'm still having to remind myself.
Humans.
We're human beings, exactly.
Even computers are failing sometimes.
I know, right? Probably because they're created by humans.
I wonder, how does the therapy help couples build qualities like patience, empathy, and resilience?
The word that comes up for me when you ask about patience is forgiveness. And that may surprise you. It may not, at first it may seem strange, but in order to be patient, you have to have the capacity to allow a person enough time or to make mistakes or to get it wrong, right? You have to have the capacity to wait.
Basically the same thing like you are supposed to do with the child.
Yes, but often we're not that generous with each other because we don't forgive those minor mistakes or misdemeanors. Okay?
Yes.
So that's why I use the word forgiveness. Yes? Because if you can forgive those minor mistakes, you can be patient. So how does therapy help a person develop that? I think is through recognizing what we were just saying about even AI needs to learn. We are all on a learning journey, actually. And in a relationship, we're learning we're learning about our partner, and they're learning about us. So you ask about patience, empathy, and resilience. Okay. The more you can learn about your partner and the more you can help them learn about you, the more those qualities will develop. Because if you learn, let's say, for as another example, let's say that your partner is somebody who needs, at least 10, 15, 20 minutes to just fully come round when they first wake up in the morning, right? And in that 10, 15 minutes, they don't want to speak. They don't, they just want a bit of time just to wake up properly. Once you learn that that is how it is for them, you can be patient with them. You can have a bit of empathy, right? And you can just give them that time, and then you can start going and this and that and whatever, right? But just don't do it in that first 15 minutes. Now, you learn those things because in therapy, and I think this is another key thing about therapy, especially couple therapy I'm speaking about now, is that perhaps for the first time in some time, what a good couple therapist can do or should do is to provide a safe, neutral space for each individual. And it's that neutrality that allows a person to explain themselves, explore, what's going on. And as you're listening, you're also learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the gift of therapy is that it provides a place where you can both be your authentic selves and you can learn, vice versa. You can learn from each other and about each other.
I mean, it's basically like you get a referee.
No,
Not
it
really.
isn't. I tell you for
Yeah.
why no, because a referee makes a judgment call. He will say this is right and this is not right. A counsellor, a good couples counsellor would never do that. It's not for me to judge what's right or not right. It's for you to understand for yourself. Right? Because what I think may be wrong could be work perfectly for you. So the key is neutrality. It's the neutral environment that has no bias.
When I meant a referee, like on boxing, referee is there to not harm himself.
Okay, yeah, okay. In that way, yes, I could agree with, yes.
And
I was thinking more of a football referee, they'll give you the yellow card,
No, that's
no.
a different thing. But
That's
on
a different
boxing,
thing.
it's just
Yeah,
to be there.
when the referee kind of pulls you apart.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's that neutralness. It's not. I'm not taking any sides here.
Yeah. Uh, my wife reads something about basically when you have an argue or something, when is it just stop a bit and take a step aside. I mean,
Yes.
basically, I mean, step aside is just to see it from outside.
Yes. Step back.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, use yourself to see exactly what happened.
Yes, exactly. And often I will actually suggest that to people. I will say, look, if you're having an argument and it's getting out of control, step out. Step out of the room, step out of the house. You separate in some way.
Yeah, I
Because,
mean, move in different room.
exactly. Because if you stay there and continue to argue, all you're going to achieve is more argument. You're not going to achieve. You have to step back a bit and kind of allow yourself to cool down so that your thinking capacity comes back online. Because when we're angry, remember, you may know this, when we're angry, we're flooded with all these emotions, and we're not thinking straight, actually. Right, we're in a totally defensive mode. It's either attack or defense. It gets very primitive, right? So you have to step back, allow your emotions to calm down so that you can actually think properly,
Yeah.
right? Um, so coming back to this therapy situation, again, you should expect a counselor to be able to allow you both to step back and look at the situation neutrally. There's another component here that I think it might be important to mention, which is that for me as a counselor, when I'm working with two individuals, I'm not treating the individuals, I'm treating the relationship.
The
Okay?
the symptom.
No, not the symptom, actually.
No.
The dynamic. Because a relationship is something that you co-create. Okay? Like an argument, you are co-creating the argument.
Yeah.
Right? You have co-created that dynamic. So for me, what I'm looking at is how that dynamic has been co-created. So that's why I'm not taking sides, because I can see his side and I can see her side, and I can see then how the two of them have created that situation. But I have to stay neutral in order to be able to do that. Because the moment that I think he's right and she's wrong, I've lost it. I have to be able to see why she's doing what she's doing and why he's doing what he's doing, so that I can see how this has come about. Right? And it's that neutral viewpoint that allows both individuals then to step back and think, right, that's what's going on here. I'll give you an example. I was working with this couple. I can't even remember the exact details now because there's so many things going on in my head. But I was working with this couple and they were giving me these examples, and she was saying all of this and he was saying all of that. And I remember now, it's come back to me. And he was complaining basically that things weren't working. And so I said, look, what I see here is, if I just step back a little bit, is I see that she's working from her fear. She has different fears. And he's working, you're working from your fears. And so what I actually see is not the details of who said what or why, but how the two of you are acting out your fears. And so what I'm trying to treat, for want of a better word, is the fear dynamic between you. Right? Because he wanted me to know how badly she was behaving and hurting him, and she's wanting me to know how badly he'd behaved and he was hurting her. But actually both of them were reacting out of whatever fear of abandonment, of whatever it is, right? As a couple therapist, I have to have the capacity to remain neutral in an argument. And that's what fosters change for both of them. So
Yeah,
originally you were talking about how it says, how does therapy help couple develop those qualities? That's how.
yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, if
I
that
mean,
all adds up.
yeah, I think I understand. If you are going to take a side, you just lose them,
Yeah, basically.
and yeah,
I've lost a
he's
couple.
going to say, "Oh, you see, I was right, and you've been wrong," and after
Exactly.
that, they're not going to seek help.
But they're not going to learn anything
Yeah.
either, are they? What are they going to learn? Nothing.
Exactly.
How to blame,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
What advice you have for the people who hesitate to seek help?
So that's a tricky one, because it depends why they're hesitating.
Because I know people say, that's bullshit, or yeah, that is not working, and our problem is not going to be fixed by a therapist.
You see that there's lots of questions, there's lots of answers to that question, really. But one of the simple answers that I can give you is the people concerned should do more investigation. Okay,
Yeah.
they should listen to people like Esther Perel, who does lots of talk shows, and she's a world-renowned couple specialist. They should talk to people who have had counselling successfully. If they want to test the waters, don't just go to one. Talk to two or three, and see who you connect with best, who feels like
Yeah.
you have more synergy, or they understand you better. And just try it. Just do at least maybe 2 or 3 sessions. If you still doesn't feel right, then give it up. But there's lots and lots and lots of stuff written all over the internet, books and what have you, about therapy, good and bad. You just have to do your research. Not everything can you solve by yourself.
True.
Right? Like anything else in life, you might have your specialisms, but you wouldn't. If you're ill, you need a doctor. If your car doesn't work, you need a mechanic. Right?
Sometimes you try to fix it by yourself, but after that you say, why I didn't go to mechanic?
Exactly. But by always do your research before really kind of committing to working with anyone. Because not everybody is good at what they do, right?
Yeah.
And also, especially when it comes to couples therapy, and this is one of my little bugbears, I am a specialist. Not every counsellor who says that they work with relationships has 4 years worth of training just in couples counselling. Okay, too often, people are trained in general counselling and have no real specialist training in couples counselling. So make sure that when you are looking for somebody to work as a couple, that they have that very specific training, like we provide at the Tavistock, because I also do supervision and training as well.
Okay, that's nice. The latest years in Romania, it's trending Gabor Mate.
Yes, he's a very special man.
Yeah, he just was on some event in Romania. But after I found out about him, I see him everywhere.
Yes.
Even in some movie, I saw some reference regarding about him.
Yes. He's a very special man.
People in Romania, they are making podcasts and talking about his books,
Yes.
about his research.
Yes.
Even these people made other books because of that books. And what I want to say, you can find help if you want.
Absolutely.
Just if you want to get better.
Yes, that's right.
It's not easy, but you can get better.
Yes. And there is lots of self-help out there. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of self-help out there. You don't It doesn't always, but it depends how deep or how serious your problem is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another one.
That's another one.
Because
Absolutely.
usually they are quite deep.
That's, yeah.
And
that's when you need a
if you
third
try
person.
to help yourself, it's taking longer.
Exactly.
Yeah, but with guidance, it's much easier. I believe.
Yes, indeed. Just on the Gabo Mate, I want to tell you that I was at a conference in September 2024, and I actually saw him speak live and I saw him work live, and I can tell you it was magic. From an experienced therapist point of view, watching somebody like him actually put into practice what he talks about was really very special. Yeah, so absolutely, 100%.
I'm not sure. I think I have some books from him.
Yeah.
I mean, not me, my wife.
Yeah, well, yeah. Either way, it's good to read. And on the other side of talking about guidance, in sex therapy particularly, there's lots of stuff out there, lots written. But again, as a specially trained psychosexual therapist, the way that I help people is much more individual, especially tailored to their needs and their situation. You can't get that through self-help.
Yeah.
Yeah? Just to make that point.
Yeah, it's exactly like the treatments when you are sick.
Exactly.
Because it can work for you, but it cannot work for somebody else.
Exactly.
What are the red flags in the relationship when the couple need to go to therapy? So everyone is fighting, but when it's going to be like a red flag, you really need to go.
I think there's nothing wrong with fighting. Let me just say that first of all, okay?
That's why I said everyone is fighting, but when is the red flag?
Yeah. Because, but you do have to learn to fight well. Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even advise people to do more fighting.
Okay.
Okay. But I think when fighting becomes abusive, that becomes a red flag. When there begins to be, kind of what I think of as dirty fighting, name calling, swearing, physical, like even just pushing each other, when it feels like it really becomes nasty, can I say that? And you don't need to be waiting for that to happen the first time that starts to happen, then that's when you know that things are gone beyond normal arguments. That's one red flag, that when it becomes verbally or physically abusive, that it should be an instant kind of. Another one is when you go for many days without speaking. So not fighting at all, if you like. Or many, a long time without intimacy. One of the red flag in that sense is how much you can, when you notice that a problem is being ignored, right? Or you've tried to fix it, but you keep falling into the same trap. The same problem keeps coming up, right? Those are the times when you really need to be going into therapy. I'll give you an example. So I had an individual come to see me about a year and a half ago, on her own. She came on her own. And I said to her at the time, look, I really think you need to come with your partner. I didn't hear anything more. She didn't turn up for any more sessions. Then a few months later, her partner contacted me, and I saw some sessions. I did, one or two sessions with them, and then I didn't hear any more. Okay, and on every occasion I saw each of those two people, I said, I really think you need to be in couples therapy. Fast forward a year. it turns out that the other partner, the second person, was unfaithful, and they're now in crisis, and they're now in, not only couples therapy but also individual therapy because everything has fallen apart. Now, had they started couples therapy a year and a half ago, right, when they already knew things were wrong, okay, the infidelity might not have happened. They might not have reached that crisis point. Okay, so I'm saying that because I think people do know when the red flags are, but they tend to ignore them. And that in itself is a red flag. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's a red flag to a red flag.
Exactly. I'm not sure if I can give you any more specific examples than that, because it depends on how you feel as well. If you find yourself often feeling alone and disconnected, and you can't find your way back, that should also be a red flag that you need some third person to help you. Sometimes one example of a good red flag was a couple that he had taken a job away from home, and they came into therapy just to help them stay, not disconnect whilst he's away. Right, so they would always have that time together with me to really talk things through and make sure that they understood that them being apart, living apart for any period of time, could be a red flag to the relationship. And so they, almost as a preemptive strike, a prevention, if you like. That's a good,
That's interesting because even I'm in the same house with my wife, I found to be a problem. I'm still working on the computer, doing editing or something for my business, and she's going to sleep by herself.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm staying until late, until 3-4 in the morning. Only lately, I realize that's a problem.
Yes. It will be.
It is now.
Especially if it happens more often than not. Now, if 5 days a week you're going to bed together, and just a couple of nights you're not, then that's okay. But if 5 nights a week you're going to bed separately and only a couple of nights, do you see what I mean? It's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So most of the time I'm not.
Yeah. So that will create a disconnect, won't it?
Yeah.
But then
I need to work on that.
Well, you certainly need to think about how to negotiate for a better balance.
Of the problem is I'm working on nights. When I'm off, I'm spending the time with them.
Yes.
During the day, but when evening is coming and I want to do basically the job.
That's a difficult one then, isn't it?
Yeah. Until I will get someone to pay to do some.
Right, sure. But one of the remedies that I would suggest, if I may, is that you maybe go up together, but then if you've had a bit of a cuddle, a bit of a talk together, and she's ready to sleep, you can come downstairs. So you've had that time together at least, that time for connection, that time for, that kind of just last thing in the day, just to kind of...
Yeah, that's a good advice.
That little bit of intimate time, and I don't mean sex, I just mean a little bit of emotional intimacy is important, because then you've strengthened that connection.
Yeah. We are going to record another episode. We are still going to eat some pizza, and we're going to have another topic.
Yes.